I think I fixed it. So now, in just a few minutes, you guys are going to see it, and you missed the pre-show, and also the first part of the intro to the show, and we're not going to redo it, unfortunately, for you.
Ooh,
But
that would be what bad radio.
that would be bad
You know, like
radio,
if we tried to make it happen again, is what I mean.
right?
So
Exactly.
let's just call this a special surprise that you get to hear later. We've got it was an ultra exclusive. We thought we were opening this up to everybody, but it was actually so exclusive that only Bobby and I were able to attend.
But now you are all here. To get you caught up, we said hi to everybody.
We
We
did. We
said
said hi to
something
all of you.
more awkwardly, talked directly to a whatnot, but
Yeah.
didn't. I mentioned how me and Kristen know each other for a little while. This was all in the
Uh-huh.
pre-show. Then we started the show and talked about ADHD medication shortages and why those exist. Um,
Yeah, all things you can hear on the podcast or the pre-show.
yeah.
We're very sorry that we kept you in the dark for so long.
But now we're
Um,
gonna finish
but
the
we're here.
intro,
Yeah.
and you're going to then we're gonna take a 5-minute break because I have to go tuck my kids in who are brushing their teeth right at this moment. All right, apologies everyone, apologies.
They
Um,
claim to be brushing their teeth.
yeah, if you had heard the pre-show, you would know that this is just icing on the cake of this chaotic, terrible evening I'm having.
Bobby's having a rough night,
Yeah.
everybody. So, but I will ask, as I do when this happens, if you find folks in the chat who stuck around this long thinking that we forgot about you, I'm very sorry.
Mm.
Um, if you could give me some questions. I have a pretty long delay, so if you have some questions for me, I can try to answer them
Oh yeah, while
on my
I'm
own.
putting
Yeah,
my kids to sleep. Okay,
'cause I
well
can
let's
I can I can talk for 5 minutes, but it's not great unless you give me some questions. So,
yeah. So fill up the chat with
that's a
questions,
yeah,
and
yeah,
but we're gonna finish the intro here real fast.
yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I did just finish mentioning the ADHD
Yeah,
med thing. I think we closed that
good.
pretty well. So we're just gonna jump
I
right
think
into
so.
talking about how we're live now. Okay. Why don't you do that? Say
Yeah, I was gonna say.
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, today is an exciting day, Bobby. Well,
Mm.
not today, September 16th. Today, the day that we recorded this, September 9th, because it's our very first live show that's open to anyone. So
Yes, anyone and
you,
everyone.
some of you who are listening to this maybe already listened to it live, get recorded live.
Yeah. Yes, we've been doing these live shows once a month for a long time for patrons, but we just decided, hey, let's do it for everyone. And this is
Yes.
the way it's going to be from now on,
Yeah. We
right?
switched things up and we got lots of great stuff for patrons. Bobby's been doing some solo recordings and I have to admit I haven't had a chance to listen to any of them. I think I listened to like a couple of minutes of one a while ago, but I haven't listened to a whole one. So I gotta get on that. I too have a Patreon subscription.
Yeah, good, good. But yeah, there's all sorts of things on there. You can check that out at patreon.com/allaroundscience. But I'm just really excited that we have new people in the chat to hang out with while we're recording this, and I can't wait to see more and more every month when we do our live shows. But just because we're doing a live show doesn't mean we don't do the normal show the way that it's normally done, right?
That's right.
And that means that the first thing we have to do is talk about some science news.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to go tuck those kids in.
Okay.
Be back.
All right. See you. All right. What do we got? Logan, what's your favorite song that you spontaneously sing? I assume this is from Genevieve. I don't know if I have a favorite. I usually just sing what I see. So it doesn't often have a very good tune, but I'm trying to think of something that I've been singing a lot lately. Actually, Riptide, that one has been coming up a lot lately because my son did in guitar, he learned how to play it. And so it just got in my head a lot. Hi Cypher. So sorry about our very delayed start. We really were talking for 20 minutes to each other, and that's it, and that's all. Until a whatnot made a comment about watching it later. I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? So favorite pickle. My favorite pickle, I actually am a big fan of pickles. And I like a pickled onion on a like a wrap or whatever. Those are good. And there's a particularly delicious pickled carrot that I've gotten a few times. My mouth is watering because it is so good. It's like a local place. They make it themselves, but like really expensive. You know, one of those places they're like, here's a jar of carrots, give me $8. And then pickled asparagus. You wouldn't think, but it's so good. So good. Okay. Also just regular pickles, like pickled cucumbers on all the sandwiches. What's your favorite movie from Logan? Hmm. This is the part where I reveal that I'm bad at picking favorites. So for favorite movies, that's tough. I tend not to rewatch movies, but there are two that I have rewatched multiple times. One of them is uh Captain America Winter Soldier. I love that movie. And the other is Team America World Police. I have watched that movie many times. So, you know, I'm super cultured and know lots about movies. Uh so those are, I guess, my favorites if I had to pick a favorite. Um Favorite rock mineral or gemstone from Genevieve. I'm a big fan of ammonite. I think it's really cool because it's basically a fossil that looks like a gemstone, and they always look really neat. And I like that it was a living thing once. That always just seems fascinating to me that you can get jewelry made out of a living thing. And I went to the Royal Tyrrell Museum, which is a museum in Alberta dedicated to dinosaurs, and they have lots of really cool things. And they have an ammonite that's like this big. It's a massive, massive ammonite. Ooh, good. I'm glad that answer was popular. Um, I really love geodes too. I find them really fascinating. Um, they're just, I don't know. It's like this little treasure inside of a rock ball. Those are cool. Tweep, yes, World Police is fantastic. I need to watch it again. It's been a few years. Spaceballs, or Deadpool and Wolverine. This is where I confess that I have not seen Deadpool and Wolverine. I really want to, but it's been a busy summer. And I'd love to see it in theaters too. So I guess by default I have to pick Spaceballs, which I love, but I also love the other two Deadpool movies. Those are super funny. Bobby, what are your thoughts on Deadpool, the movies?
I like Deadpool.
Yeah.
That's my
Did you
thoughts.
see the most recent one?
Yeah, it was real good. I've heard some people not like it, but I thought it was real good.
Okay. All right. Well, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment.
Mm.
Genevieve has um a trivia question for us.
Oh,
I've been answering questions in the chat. Uh and she wants to know if you can name the 4 different crystals that are found in geodes, and I'm going to say I cannot. I certainly cannot.
I can't either. Quartz is one of them, and
Cool.
amethyst. I mean, I don't
Oh,
know.
that's what I was going to say cuz it's purple.
Yeah, quartz and amethyst.
Do you mean like crystal formations, or do you mean like the
Yeah,
types of?
or just the crystals.
Yeah, I don't
Because
know.
those are the two that I know is quartz and amethyst. I think
A surprise trivia
I
question.
feel like Yeah, that's all I know. So,
All right. Well, Genevieve, you've stumped us. Well done.
yeah.
Please let us know. Get your dad to type it in the chat. Tweet, we should do a watch along of Deadpool and Wolverine. That'd be fun. It's not exactly
That would,
family friendly
yeah,
though, which is sort of our brand. So
yeah. That one's not for the kids.
all around science after dark.
Quartz, amethyst, fluorite, and one other she can't remember. Okay.
Well, I'm gonna look it up
That's
now.
better than us. Yeah.
Gee.
3 out of 4 ain't bad to remember there. So,
Well, there's a lot of, according to Britannica, quartz is listed first.
that's the most
Um,
common one, I think.
Calcite or dolomite. Sometimes aragonite, anchorite, hematite, magnetite, pyrite, chalcopyrite. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Sphalerite.
Oh my gosh.
So if that list meant anything to you, you are a geologist.
or or some kind of geology fan. That's a lot. Yeah.
It makes sense that there would be like multiple options. You know, like not every geode is going to be exactly the same.
Yeah. I don't know much
Yeah.
about how they form either.
Well, I guess we're going to have to do a geode episode.
Mm.
An epigeode. There are more than 4. She looked it up. Okay. Well, thanks, Genevieve. That is that's awesome. I just looked at the first result in Google. I'll tell you that. I don't know how reliable it is. It said Britannica, so I assume somewhat
So,
reliable.
how many arguments do you think are begun by looking at the top of a Google search?
Right? Yeah. You got to be careful. It's not terribly reliable, but I just, I looked.
Yeah.
Oh, she wants a geode episode. Okay, noted. Okay.
You ready?
So, we ready?
I'm ready.
So this is something crazy
Oh,
that some researchers just found out. That some bacteria can actually adapt to the season.
to the seasons?
Yeah, they
So
can
like
tell.
spring, summer, fall, winter?
Those are the ones. Yeah.
That's interesting. So like trees,
Right?
like how trees adapt to the seasons.
Right.
Or how some
Plants.
animals do.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to know, like, I think we've talked a little bit about why trees change color and how that
Yeah.
happens. And
Yeah.
it's a phenomenon called photoperiodism. Basically, as the day-night cycle changes, these plants can sense that difference.
Is that
Possibly
how plants
animals
do
if
it?
they're losing fur and whatever.
Is they just are able to tell the difference in the length of the day?
Well, sometimes for some effects.
Okay.
But sometimes too, you'll see trees like get confused if it gets too cold too early or whatever. Like
Yeah, that's kind of
they'll
what I
turn yellow.
assumed, is that it was temperature
Yeah.
because of that. Sometimes
Yeah.
things will blossom too early because it got warm too quick one week.
Yeah. Yeah. My guess is it's probably a wombo combo.
Okay.
But photoperiodism is when an organism can track day and night cycles.
Oh, okay.
So this was a question that a researcher had, and she kind of didn't think. Well, I shouldn't say she. She thought this is something I should investigate, but the uh, the scientist in charge of her lab was like, that's not gonna work. So, but he said, try it anyway. Let's see what happens. And so she studied blue-green algae, which are actually not algae, but cyanobacteria.
Okay.
And gave them different lengths of daylight
All right.
at a warm temperature for 8 days.
Huh.
So you would have, cyanobacteria number 1 had 6-hour days, and number 2 had 12-hour days, and number 3 had 18-hour days or something. I don't know the exact numbers they used, but
Okay.
so a different set, different sets of of bacteria experiencing different lengths of day.
Sure.
And after this, the algae were placed in ice for 2 hours,
Interesting.
and then their survival rates were tested.
Huh.
So, if you go into ice and you're a bacteria, that could be deadly. Um, but if you knew it was coming, if you knew winter was coming, then it stands to reason that you would be better equipped for it. So,
Good point.
um, what happened was the algae that were exposed to short days, so it was 8 hours of light, not 6, and 16 hours of dark, showed up to a 75% survival rate, which was 3 times higher than algae not prepared with short days, the ones that had the
Wow.
longer days.
Wow.
And the equinox days, they didn't survive as much, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Now it had to be they had to be exposed to those short days for a period of several days. In particular, 6 to 8 days really improved cold resistance. 1 day wasn't enough. And they also tested some cyanobacteria that whose biological clocks were genetically removed.
Oh,
So they basically took out the mechanism responsible.
for like the what's the word for they have like a circadian rhythm and there's a
Essentially, yeah, yeah. So they thought, okay, well, we think
Hmm.
these genes help them survive the cold or help them to
Oh, okay,
to
okay.
regulate, during the seasons. So they took those out,
Yeah.
and they did not show improved cold survival. So their internal clocks, genetically coded internal clocks, are crucial for adapting to seasonal changes. These bacteria can adapt to the seasons.
Wow.
And this is the first study to show that bacteria can use photoperiodism, that day night cycle tracking,
Yeah.
to get ready for seasonal shifts. Somehow, these shorter days made the bacteria more ready for cold conditions.
When you say somehow, do we know how? Do they have an idea of the
No,
mechanism? No?
we don't know how they do it.
Wow.
That's the cool part. There's something to figure out here. We have no idea how they're doing this. And here's the other thing that's just mind blowing: these bacteria have lifespans of 6 to 24 hours.
That's it?
So that means 6 to 24 hours. And they needed that like 6 to 8 days of short days to be able to show this cold resistance. So they are somehow passing this information on
Wow.
to
Yeah.
generations below them, multiple generations.
Yeah, because if it takes 6 to 8 days of exposure, then none of the cyanobacteria that were alive when that exposure started are still
Mhm.
alive. Like their great
Mhm.
great great grandchildren are are the ones that are experiencing the change, right?
Great, 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 great grandchildren.
Wow, I missed a great. You're wow. That's many generations is the point though. So yeah, it must be being passed
Exactly.
on somehow.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
it had
interesting.
to be those 6 days, so it's happening gradually,
Hmm.
which is also really interesting because I wonder what condition this could be useful if you had a some sort of situation where the bacteria was maybe going into a cave, getting blocked from light, having more darkness,
Hmm.
it's more likely to be cold in there as well. I wonder if that also will contribute to it, because you would think 1 day should
Yeah.
be enough. Obviously, the change happens gradually, in nature, so maybe that's the difference. I'm speculating here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like it's
but,
possible that the change that's happening is costly for the bacteria, right?
yes, exactly, that
So
could be true.
so you wouldn't want to be quick to make that change if
Mhm,
it's costly. And so
mhm.
if a mechanism is built in that takes multiple generations to to commit to, then maybe that's why, is because they want to be sure that this costly change is going to have a payoff. I mean, I say it as if they are making a choice. It's not exactly
Right,
that they're
yeah.
choosing, but you understand what I mean. Like
Yeah,
it
that's
would
the tendency,
it would
inevitably.
benefit them possibly to be sure that this is going to be something that is, a change that they're making because of a larger trend, a more permanent trend, or a longer lasting trend in temperature change.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Um, yeah, I mean, there's so much to learn from this. It's a brand new discovery. Like I said, no
yeah,
one else has proved that bacteria do this before. How do they pass on this information from one generation to the next? We don't know. Can this help us figure out how organisms in general can adapt to changes in environmental conditions?
mm,
That would be something great.
yeah,
In particular, if we can figure out how to make crops more adapted to climate change,
yeah,
that could be huge. There's some parts of the world that will get much colder, and so um, this kind of adaptation is big. And I wonder too if it goes the other way, like if they're living in their cold, dark environment, if you switch it up and then bring them to heat, do they die in the heat? Do they need time to sort of warm up to warmer temperatures, so to speak?
yeah, right.
A hundred different areas of research, 100 different ways that this could go, but totally fascinating.
Very cool.
I did it. I scienced.
You did. Sorry, I was informing some people that we're back, that our technical difficulty is over if they came in.
So I'm seeing nobody in the participant list. Um, it's possible people had to step away, but last time this happened, we weren't going. So I'm just gonna send a quick message. Can everyone see us?
Well, I know
Yes, they
exactly
can. Good.
why they couldn't see us before. So YouTube does
Okay.
so I stream other things on Twitch and some things on YouTube, and YouTube has a feature that's good, but is also has done me in before, where what you do is you, in your streaming software like OBS, like, which is what most people use, um, you you click to start streaming. YouTube shows you in their dashboard, in their interface, that you've got a live feed, right? It'll show you the video. And so that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, oh, good, we're there. But you still, the last step in YouTube is you have to click start stream.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's, and the reason they do that is because they're creating a way for you to preview the stream before you go live, right? Um, and the other time that's happened to us before, it was the same problem. I need to add like a little sticky note somewhere that says start stream.
Start stream. You'd think that'd
Yeah.
be, yeah.
Logan has a question. Have you ever gone back and retracted something you've reported on the show when it was shown to be more controversial with further research? Have we done that?
I don't think so. And I don't know if I would retract it necessarily
Yeah, we might
because a lot
correct
of
ourselves if that's
times
what you mean. Like,
because we're just going with the most current information, and so
yeah, we're
if
pretty.
if 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 we say something inaccurate, I did retract when I had the wrong Oppenheimer.
That's
We
true.
talked about
We that's and that's
sensor.
what I mean. We will correct ourselves if we have inaccurate information. That's happened before. Uh, but something that's more controversial, we generally do one of two things. Either, if it is a controversial topic, we try to be pretty upfront about that. Like this is something that's
Mhm.
not settled. A lot of people disagree about this, but here's what we do know, right? That's kind of how we approach things like that, and or if it's too controversial and there's just nothing to be said about it because it's still so up, then we don't, you know, say too much about it. I don't know if you have anything specific in mind, Logan, and that you were thinking of as an example, but I can't think of a situation where we've ever gone back and said we're we're we shouldn't
This
have
was
done that.
proven totally wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um the I am thinking of one, not series, but about 3 times, at least twice, maybe 3 times, we talked about the AI that was being developed to turn electrical signals in the brain into speech,
Yes.
and we got to see that actually happen for that one woman. I kinda saw the research start to trickle in, and then those researchers went on to actually set it up for this one woman, and that was really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. He says nothing
It's
in
not a
mind.
gotcha
It's not a
question.
gotcha question. I didn't think it was a gotcha question, Logan. I just, you know how you think of questions like that because you just have something in your mind that you were thinking of. I was just curious what brought the question to mind for you. But yeah. No.
But not opposed to doing that, if the research shows. Honestly, though, I think a lot of the times I'll forget. Like I might remember if we reported on it, but that's
Yeah.
about it. And then I won't really remember what I said at the episode
Yeah.
previous. So
Yeah, we
I may
certainly
not add that in.
yeah, we're certainly humble enough to admit when we've gotten something wrong or we shouldn't have dipped our toe into something, you know. Like I can't imagine that we wouldn't, that we would shy away from that.
Yeah.
That's sort of how science works, right? You got to admit when you're wrong. You got to change your opinion. You've got to update your information, and that's what we try to do.
What about when we finished the human genome like 3 times? Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Oh my
yeah.
god, stop finishing the human genome.
I think we joked about that the
Uh,
last time that
yes,
they.
yeah.
And
Like for real, for real, 100%
I
done.
think even said this time for the last time, the human genome has been
I
completely
was
mapped.
like, I give up.
But even in there, I think on that one we were like, but there's like 2% that they don't, or like 1%. So
I'm just gonna walk out of the room if that happens.
yeah, yeah. Well, it will. It will. It'll be the last time, the next time for the last. But then what'll happen is
Ugh.
they'll come back and say, we mapped the whole human genome, but now we've mapped all of the like, what do you call it? We've somehow mapped all of the epigenetic reactions of the
Right?
genome.
Yeah, or mitochondrial DNA,
Yeah.
or the what are like there's like free floating genes in our
Oh
in
yeah, you
our
talked about
right?
that recently.
Yeah. So
It's just
yeah.
never ending. Yeah.
Genevieve wants to know, does Moore speak French? Oui, je parle français, but not very well. So, I took a school in French for 10 years and then I stopped doing that. So, I feel like when you learn a second language that young, it's like in your brain, like it's in
Yeah.
there. And I can with a bit of immersion get back into it.
Yeah.
But I haven't kept it up. I really
Like
should
riding
read
the
in
proverbial
French.
bike.
Yeah, yeah. Reading in French though is sort of like swimming through soup for me
Is it?
because in English, I
What's it
see
like to
everything that's
swim through
happening.
soup?
It's warm
Oh, okay.
and cloudy.
Yeah.
But when I read it in French, I'm like constantly thinking about it. I should
Mm.
read something like familiar in French.
Yeah,
It'll
you
be
did French immersion, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think Genevieve has done French or is in some kind of French. Does Genevieve speak French, Logan? Is that why she's asking?
Yes,
Or is
I'm
she
curious
learning
to know.
French? I feel like I've talked about
Est-ce que
that
tu
with.
parles français? Or parlez-vous français,
Hmm,
Genevieve?
yeah.
Butchering it. I'm sure
Hey, it's
Genevieve has
better
better
than I
French than
could do.
I.
I don't know.
Swimming in warm, cloudy soup.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
that's awesome. She does do French immersion. My kids do too, or other kid will eventually.
yeah.
It's awesome. Keep it up. And after you're done, keep reading and speaking where you can. I know it's hard to speak French in class, but that really is the best way.
Yeah.
That's what my teachers would always say, and I'd always try to sneak in English where I could. Oh, she's speaking back in French now. Hooray!
That's awesome. That's awesome.
That's cool.
You guys ready for some hard-hitting science discussions?
Let's do it.
All right. I have so I literally did all the notes for this and did it all in the school pickup line today. So it's not organized very well, so bear with me. We're gonna do it though.
I got you. My notes were constructed under a similar lack of focus.
Yeah. All right. Hold on. Now I have to check something. Because this was inspired by something. I wanted to mention it. Oh, it might have been messaged to me directly. There we go. I found it. Oh, man, that was lucky because it was a DM and it was an older one. All right. Got it.
Okay.
More, I got a message from somebody on Discord recently who messaged me about an article, a science article that had to do with celiac disease or gluten, basically, actually, and celiac disease, and it was by a person on Discord, Warp Forged, and so I was reading it, and it was an interesting thing about we're getting closer to understanding what causes celiac disease and everything. And first of all, when I was reading it, I was like, I didn't know that we weren't totally clear on how celiac disease happens.
No, I didn't know that either. Yeah.
But we aren't totally clear on that, and I'll get into that in a minute. But as I was reading it, I thought, you know what? That's a really interesting topic. Is this whole idea of celiac disease? Celiac disease, for those who don't know, and I'll get more into detail on this in a minute, is it's a disease that's triggered by gluten. And so I've got a brother who has celiac disease, and so he deals with this all the time. And I've talked to him before about like what it's like to have celiac, also what it's like to live in a world where there's a bunch of fad gluten diets and people who think that they have gluten sensitivities and all this kind of stuff. And I've just done a lot of thinking about it and talking to him about it and all this kind of thing. And so this got me thinking about it. And I thought, you know what, maybe I don't think we've ever done like we might have mentioned celiac or mentioned gluten stuff before on the show. It's possible over the past 210 episodes we've done that. I can't remember exactly, but I thought, why not do a little roundup on what is gluten? What is gluten? What is celiac disease? Is there such a thing as gluten sensitivity? Are there gluten allergies? All that kind of stuff. I thought it would be interesting to talk about.
That's awesome. It's funny because you messaged me saying you were going to talk about this. I was literally thinking about gluten today and how all it really needs is a rebrand.
Yeah.
Because if you're celiac, gluten can make you sick. But for the most part, as far as I know, and I'm sure you'll enlighten us, there's not many other reasons to avoid it. Like, it's not harmful to you. It's not gonna really do anything to your gut unless you're intolerant to it. So
right.
I feel like the problem with gluten is actually its name.
Yeah, it needs a rebranding.
Yeah, it needs to be, because it sounds like glutton, right? It sounds like you're just gonna gorge yourself on bread and
it's one of the 7 deadly sins, gluten.
Right? It's gluten.
Gluttony.
Gluttony. I think this is my proposed name for gluten.
Okay.
Stretch protein.
Stretch protein. Yeah, there you go. Because that's kind of what it is, right?
That's what it does.
That's a really good.
That's my thoughts on gluten. Just out of the gate, need to get those out there. So Bobby, go tell us.
Yes, so that's a really good segue into just talking about, like, let's start there. What is gluten? So gluten is it's a protein, and it's a protein that's found in wheat, rye, and barley. And it's the thing that when you make bread out of flour, wheat flour, it makes the bread stretchy. It's sort of creates when it's baked, it creates sort of a protein structure like a web. It's when you break open a piece of bread and you've got that like bouncy webbing of stuff that's in there, all that stretchy bounciness, squishiness. That's the gluten. The gluten's making that happen, and it's because it's a connected web of proteins, and the protein is made up of two parts, and this is important. We don't always get into like super nitty gritty chemistry details, but the two parts of the protein are important for celiac disease, understanding it.
Right.
The two parts are gliadin and glutenin. They're just two parts of the whole. The glutenin is kind of what makes the stretchy structure. The glutenin creates chains, and the gliadin are kind of like parts that are inside there also, and they can be separated. But together they make the whole gluten protein, and that's basically it. That's what gluten is. It's just a protein that's found on these grains, right? And so celiac disease, though, it's an autoimmune disorder that triggers when people eat gluten. Not people, but people with celiac disease. Whenever people with celiac disease eat gluten, it triggers an autoimmune reaction that causes the body to attack itself in the small intestines. It happens all in the small intestines.
That must hurt.
Yeah, and it's not pleasant. I remember my brother going through lots of really terrible times because one of the troubles with this is that it's all gastrointestinal symptoms.
Yeah.
Stomach pain or abdominal pain, diarrhea, all kinds of stuff. But it can be hard to diagnose those kinds of symptoms, right? Those can be the symptoms of a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But what's going on when that happens is the autoimmune reaction happens to the gliadin part of the gluten protein. Whenever the body sort of recognizes that, it overreacts and has an autoimmune response and starts attacking the cells in the small intestines. And what it ends up doing is it damages the villi in the small intestines. Now, what the villi are
damages them. Oh.
Yeah, so in your small intestines, all along the lining of the wall of your small intestines are these little finger-like protrusions, very, very tiny, and they're called villi. Each one of these is a villi, and it's just a protrusion. It's like, just think about like little fingers all along your small intestines. And the purpose of this is a little bit to help move stuff along in your intestines, but mostly what it's there to do is increase the surface area of each one of those little things. Helps to absorb nutrients and water from the stuff that we eat, right? So as the food moves through the small intestines, it moves along all these little fingers that are sticking out inside your small intestines and absorb stuff. Over time, people with celiac disease will have atrophied villi. And what that does is each one of those little fingers atrophies. It gets smaller and sort of turns into a lump rather than a long finger. And that reduces the surface area on the inside of your small intestines, thereby making it difficult for people with celiac disease to properly absorb nutrients and stuff over time. So that leads to symptoms like I mentioned, diarrhea. There's statorrhea and anemia. Now, what those are...
yes. Question, Bobby.
Yes.
What is statorrhea?
So statorrhea is kind of like, let me explain what causes each one of those, and then maybe it'll make it clear.
Okay.
So all of these are caused by the fact that your body is not able to absorb things very well, right? The diarrhea happens because your body, the villi, absorb water. Well, if your small intestines can't absorb water very well anymore, you have a lot of water hanging out in your small intestines, you're going to end up with diarrhea. Iron, things like iron in your food, if your body can't absorb the iron very well, you're going to end up with anemia. And also villi absorb fats into your body. So if fats can't be absorbed, and you end up with a bunch of
Oh,
excess fats, oils, and stuff like
okay.
that in your food, then that's steatorrhea. It's a lot of excess fatty deposits in your stool.
Ugh.
Not pleasant.
Nope. This
These,
all sounds terrible.
yeah. You can imagine that a lot of pain is associated with it,
Yeah,
nausea,
yeah.
all this kind of stuff. I I remember when my brother was going through all this, and it was not known what was wrong. It was a very stressful, tough time for him to go through. Another thing that happens is kids who now celiac disease can present at any age, but it often happens in kids. Uh, but one of the things that happens is kids, because they're not absorbing nutrients from their food, they have a what's called a failure to thrive. So
Oh.
they don't grow very well.
Mm.
They're
Mhm.
small. They're short. They're all this
Mhm.
kind of stuff. And so I remember when they finally figured out what it was, and the way that you figure it out is you eventually, after you go through all these steps of dealing with all these symptoms, eventually they started testing his blood and for the presence of antigens. Because
Mm.
remember, and I'll get into how celiac disease happens, but you can do a blood test that detects the presence of antigens in the blood. Not 100%. That doesn't 100% mean that they have celiac, but then you can also do a genetic test to coincide with that. That will confirm. And so they did that. He has celiac, and they, he stopped eating gluten, and it was night and day.
Yeah.
Suddenly, no more pain, no more like living and
Oh.
feeling good.
Oh.
He started growing a ton.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
these kinds of things. It's just it was a big deal. And people with celiac can. There's also this is a little bit more controversial, but a lot of people report experiencing mental health side effects as a celiac symptom.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
just which is like I said, it's a little bit more controversial, but there's some plausibility there. We've talked before about how your diet can impact the way your brain works, like neurotransmitters and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and your
Um,
your gut and brain are very heavily connected.
yeah,
Plus, feeling sick and bad all the time is
yeah,
definitely going to affect your mental health. Like that makes
yeah.
total
That
sense to
that makes
me.
sense all by itself, right?
Yeah.
It's estimated. A couple more stats. It's estimated that this is wild. It's estimated that 1 in 100 people, 1% of all people, have celiac disease.
It's quite a lot.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
But it's also thought that only about 30% of those people with celiac disease are diagnosed.
Oh, wow.
Um,
That's a really small percentage because how do you like bread is everywhere. Like
yeah.
there's so much gluten everywhere.
Well, some people think that people go their whole lives just
Accepting pain.
dealing with the symptoms and thinking it's just a natural part of life. Because, like you said, gluten's everywhere. So
It truly is.
imagine, like, how do everything you do to try to solve this problem with your gastrointestinal issues that you're having, probably a lot of things don't do anything. And because gluten is in so many things, it's probably really hard to nail down trying to eliminate things from your diet and um and figure it out.
I had a friend who celiac and she went through um a lot just to get diagnosed,
Hmm.
and she would describe how things would just cause so much pain,
Yeah,
and she was always having trouble with digestion. Like she constantly was dealing with it for years and years and years. I
yeah,
think she was a young adult by the time she finally did before they had a blood test. It was like an elimination test. You had to like just you had to eat gluten to see if it hurt you essentially.
yeah,
And so she had a rough couple of weeks when she had to do that. But
yeah.
it's much better now.
Those elimination tests are tough. What they do is they like you said, they eliminate. What they'll do is they'll spend some time completely removing gluten from your diet. Um, and and that's tough already, right?
That's hard to do. Yeah.
So they completely remove gluten from your diet, and you might improve, but in order to determine that it was the gluten that was the issue, they do what's called a challenge, a gluten challenge. And they say, okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to have you, eat a cup full of flour or something, like it's not literally that, but
swallow this cup of flour.
but but they just say, okay, you've spent, a couple weeks without gluten, everything's better. Now we're going to give you gluten and just gluten. Maybe it's like a slice of bread or something. And then they say, and then we're going to wait and see what happens. And that's tough, but it's got to be great knowing when it happens, right? Like,
for sure.
At least you have a way forward. The last stat is that it's hereditary. It's highly hereditary, apparently. And in fact, if you have a first degree relative with celiac, that means like a brother or like a sibling, a parent, a first degree relative with celiac, then you have a 1 in 10 chance of having it. So you might be wondering, well, Bobby, you have a brother with celiac. Do you have celiac? No, I don't. At least not as far as I know. I've never been tested.
Have you eaten bread?
I do eat a lot of bread.
I'm guessing you're fine.
So that's one of the reasons. So I know that if my stepmom was listening, she would say, "I've been trying to get you to get tested for whatever, like forever."
Yeah.
Because she's been she for years was trying to convince me when they were trying to convince me to get tested for celiac, get the genetic test and all that kind of stuff. But I don't have a lot of symptoms at all. She was, and so the thing is, like, if you don't have any symptoms, and you then a lot of these like screening tests can sometimes do more harm than good, right? So it's pretty clear when you start having these celiac symptoms. So that's the way I kind of took it. I was like, well, if I start having some of these symptoms, then I'll get it checked out.
Yeah.
You can also have the genetic markers or the genes for celiac, but not have celiac disease. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, let me explain.
Explain.
So this is a good segue into how celiac works, right? People with celiac disease have a set of genes that produce a type of protein. And they're called HLA proteins. Specifically two HLA proteins. This is for the people who love numbers and love the details. It's
we have a friend joining us.
Oh, I love friends.
Hi, sweetie. Are you going to bed? No. No? What are you doing?
I'm just saying hi to you.
You saying hi to Bobby?
Hi.
No, I'm saying hi to you.
Oh, you're not saying hi to Bobby.
Oh.
He's laughing because you're not saying hi to him.
Why?
Because that's a silly thing to say.
Why are you laughing?
Because you're funny. Boop. Jamie, if you gotta go upstairs and see Daddy, you gotta get your jammies on. It's almost bedtime. No, she doesn't.
Apparently not.
What's that?
You're wrong.
I'm not gonna spin you, honey. You gotta go back upstairs. All right, it's my turn for a 5-minute break.
All right.
I will see you in a bit.
All right. So, yes, Mora's daughter is adorable. My kids have not been tested, Logan. They don't have these symptoms either, though. I'm going to take a break here and not get too much more into celiac yet, right? So that we can finish this when Mora gets back. But no, they haven't been tested. How's everybody doing? Everybody doing good? Apparently, I had a thought in my head and then it left. Does that ever happen to you guys? That happens to me a lot. I feel like every time I take a breath and stop for a second, I start thinking about all the soccer stuff I have to do now. We have like 2 practices a week, and then 1 game a week, and the practices are at like 5:45 to 7:15, so like right in the middle of dinner time. It's going to be such a challenging thing to work into the schedule of our day because often my wife gets off work and can join us for dinner, um, but she gets off at 6. But now we're going to have all these soccer practices. Does that mean we put bedtime later on those days so that we can have dinner when we get home? And if so, what kind of dinner are we going to have? Or do we have dinner before practice? That seems to make a decent amount of sense. I don't know. Oh, Tweep says, now that you got your first tattoo, when are you getting your full neck face tattoo? I'm getting one tomorrow. It's gonna be all I'm gonna get my face. I'm gonna look like an owl. I'm gonna get an owl's face put on my face, and I'm gonna be Bobby the Owl. I've thought of what kind of a tattoo could I get that would be like a cool, useful thing to be done. Like, you know how what's his name? From Mythbusters, not Jamie, the other one who's way more in the spot, like does stuff, and I just cannot remember names right now. So, who's the guy from Mythbusters?
Oh, I can see his face. The one with the beret or the one with the glasses?
The glasses, not the beret guy.
I was just stalling because I still can't. Adam
Savage. Thank you. Yeah, Adam Savage has a tattoo that's like a ruler, and he uses it all the time. And so I thought,
That's awesome, but your body does like shift and change. It might not be that consistent.
Well, I'm sure he's not like, building machines with.
Well, yes.
It's not like he needs caliper accuracy or anything. I'm sure it's just like, he's like, oh, I wonder how big it's a centimeter.
It's actually so smart, though.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
Yeah, but I was thinking, I wonder what kind of cool little useful thing I could get, like for aviation or something, to put on a tattoo. Or
I still am like tattoos. I just think of them totally differently now.
Yeah.
Just they're like alive,
Yeah.
Immune system being alive. It's so cool.
Yeah. All right, ready to jump back in?
Ready.
All right, let me see. Oh, I know what I was about to say. Okay. So for our people who like all these little nitty-gritty details, the types of proteins specifically that cause celiac are HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8. Those are the ones that cause the problem. So people with celiac have a set of genes that produce those types of proteins, HLA-DQ2 and DQ8.
Sounds more like milk allergy to me.
Yeah, DQ, Dairy Queen.
DQ.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey.
Exactly. But so what these proteins do is they grab onto the pieces of gluten and they hold it out and present it for T cells to find. That's their job, these HLA proteins. They're HLA proteins in general do this. They're called human leukocyte antigen proteins, and their special job in the body in general is to find the dead leavings, the dead carcasses of fallen and failed attackers that our immune system has done something with. And they take the pieces left on the battlefield, these HLA proteins, and they hold them up, and they like heads on spikes around the outside of a city. And they hold them up. And they say, these are the ones that we need to look out for.
Yeah.
And so they present it to T cells. So these ones are doing that with these gluten proteins. The problem with HLA, DQ2, and DQ8 is that they're specially shaped to hold on to gluten peptides, gluten protein parts.
I see.
But not just any gluten. They hold on to the chunks of the gluten, the what am I saying? The gliadin, that is able to resists digestion. All right.
Oh, and does it just generally for everyone resist digestion
Yes, these
or?
gliadin generally resist digestion. It makes it into
Okay,
your
got it.
small intestines intact in that
Okay.
way. And so we have a lot of it floating around is the point. So it's really unfortunate that some people
Mm,
have these specific
mm.
HLA proteins that link up with gliadin and then present it to T cells and say, find this and it's a problem.
Yes, yes.
When it's not really a problem. So they find the gluten peptide and then they go hunting and looking for it and attack. And then the T cells, once they've been clued into the gliadin, they go and they end up also attacking the cells on the lining of our small intestines because they're just not very good at recognizing the specific thing. Now, this is part of the part that we don't know why. All right.
Hmm.
We don't know the link between why is it that they're being clued into the gliadin protein peptide, but then they're attacking our body, right? What's going on there?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's where active research is going on, and we're trying to figure that out. It's
Interesting.
not really clear exactly what it is, but you were saying, wondering, do I have celiac, and how is that possible that I could, some people could have the genes but not have celiac disease, right?
Hmm.
And that's
Hmm.
because not all people with the HLA DQ2 and DQ8 proteins have the disease. It's a necessary but not a sufficient cause for celiac. For celiac disease to develop, the chunks of the gluten have to be carried across the gut wall by an enzyme that makes them even more recognizable by our immune system, and then some other stuff happens.
Okay, interesting.
And again, that's these other stuff that happens is part of this equation of
Right, right.
what we don't quite understand. Is there's something else going on in the body as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and one thing that they think might be a clue to what causes this is that the cells in the intestinal wall that are responsible for releasing the enzymes that help make it go across the wall are also responsible for expressing the HLA proteins that grab the gluten and parade it around. So they think that there might be some
Okay.
sort of link there.
Okay.
These cells that are producing these things are so highly involved that maybe those are the cells that are being attacked. Maybe our immune system is attacking those things because they're, maybe so closely related. Who knows? Who knows? But the fact is that they do attack the lining of our intestines, and that's not great. It's
Interesting.
not great. But that's celiac disease, and it's not pleasant.
That's a lot more complicated than I thought. And it's
Yeah.
funny too because you think about your intestinal wall being attacked, and I always kind of thought there was something that was basically missing. You know what I mean? Like your immune system's going in there, going for the gluten, and accidentally attacking the intestinal
Yeah.
lining, right? Because there's just so much of it. But I guess that wouldn't necessarily happen. That seems actually kind of unlikely now that you've talked about this a little bit.
Yeah, I don't and scientists are trying to figure it out,
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's celiac is such a it's really, we really want them to figure it out because you feel so bad for these people, and so many people do
awful.
have celiac disease, right? And the only way to treat the only way to treat celiac disease, right?
Don't eat gluten.
Yeah, that is it. Is
Yeah.
completely remove gluten from your diet, because there is a range. Some people have it a little bit less, not as quite as bad as other people, but the problem is if you have celiac disease, prolonged exposure does more and more and more damage, and it just
Yeah, that's the thing.
yeah
It's long-term damage.
yeah
I have a friend who can eat gluten in Europe, but not here because apparently it's like a different,
that's
I don't know,
strange.
strain, like type of gluten that's in the different breads. So she can buy a big bag of Italian flour for $50 and make bread out of that and eat that. But if she eats Canadian American bread, no luck.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I had no idea that was a thing. And it's not for
Yeah.
all celiac people, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully that people can figure it out. But so that's celiac disease, but that always gets me. You were just talking about, in our last episode, we were talking about medical pseudoscience, and pseudoscience abounds when it comes to gluten
Whenever
stuff.
there's something you can eat, really, especially when it has a name like gluten.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's all these gluten-free diets and stuff like that because people think. So basically what has happened is let's talk about gluten allergy, okay? First of all,
Okay.
right off the top, let me just say there's no such thing as a gluten allergy. All right? That's it. Like I can just say that. I'm going to explain a little bit more detail, but I just want everybody to know right away. There's no such thing as a gluten allergy. It's not a real thing. Allergies are different than autoimmune diseases.
Okay.
All right. And so because I know that some people might be thinking, well, isn't celiac, our bodies recognizing a foreign invader and then mounting a response? Isn't that really what an allergy is? Not exactly. Allergies and autoimmune diseases are different. So an allergy is when, yes, there's a foreign invader, like an antigen, like gluten. I won't say gluten because, again, there's no gluten allergy.
Peanuts.
So peanuts, there you go. You got a foreign invader, a peanut protein comes in and it's detected by the immune system. Yes, that does happen. And then the body mounts a response to that. That response is called an allergic reaction, right?
Right.
And what an allergic reaction is, very basically, it's characterized mostly by inflammation. And so inflammation happens because the body's opening up all the floodgates in membranes in the certain part of your body where it's happening in order to make it easier for immune cells to get there and fight the invasion, right? And so that's what happened is, you get you're allergic to pollen and you get pollen around your eyes and your nose. You're going to get a bunch of inflammation in there and it's going to cause you to have congestion and runny nose and stuff like that. If you eat peanuts or if you have a nut allergy and you eat that, you might get a lot of swelling in your mouth and around your throat, right? Because that's where it was. And so the immune system inflammation is happening right there.
Yeah.
An autoimmune disease is different. An autoimmune disease is when the immune system mistakenly, when there is a foreign invader, or I shouldn't even say when there's a foreign invader. Let me just say an autoimmune disease is just when the immune system mistakenly attacks our body's own cells.
So
Right.
that's interesting because this is an introduction of a foreign invader, so to speak, but the immune system is attacking our body because of that invader.
Yes.
That's why this doesn't make sense to them. That's why they haven't figured it all out, because it's like two things happening at once.
Right. And that's why you could be forgiven for confusing it for a gluten allergy.
Yeah.
Is because celiac is not an allergy, though. Yes, there is a foreign invader, but that gluten that's coming in that's causing an immune response is somehow causing the immune system to attack the body's own cells. This isn't the only time that this kind of thing happens. Right off the top of my head, HIV is a virus that causes an autoimmune response, right?
Right.
Your body, it's very complicated. I'm not trying to get into the details of it, but I know that the disease, AIDS, that HIV causes is an autoimmune disease, right?
Right. Yes.
And so it's like that. You've got a viral foreign invader that causes an autoimmune response. So it's not unusual,
Okay. Yeah.
but
Makes sense.
but that's the difference there. That's why an allergy is not the same as an autoimmune disease, why celiac is not an allergy. So the way I like to think about allergies are when the immune system attacks the foreign invader itself. Autoimmune disease is when the immune system attacks our own body, right?
Got it.
There's no known case of the body having an allergic reaction to gluten, and that's why we can say that there's no such thing as a gluten allergy. It's never been seen where that's happened, an allergic reaction to gluten.
Okay.
So the other question is, the other one you hear a lot about is gluten sensitivity, right? And so some people experience a bunch of negative gastrointestinal symptoms like bloating and diarrhea and other stuff, but they don't have celiac disease. All right.
Okay.
So if you've got all these symptoms that kind of look like that kind of stuff and you don't have celiac disease, that would be troubling. You'd want to figure out what the cause of that was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it can be frustrating trying to figure that out. Now, there's a growing movement, or it was growing about 5 or 10 years ago. I actually don't hear it as often anymore, but about 5 or 10 years ago, there was a pretty large growing movement of people who started to blame gluten on these types of gastrointestinal symptoms.
Sure. Okay.
And then they started restricting their diets, and then they saw improvement.
Mm-hmm.
They called this non-celiac gluten sensitivity, or NCGS.
Okay.
Non-celiac gluten sensitivity is what everybody started calling it. It led to a big gluten-free movement as people started touting the benefits of removing gluten from your diet. Gluten then started to be demonized as bad, as and so then that got just into the general zeitgeist of good of health claims and health pseudoscience and stuff like that. People,
It's funny because when I was thinking about this today, there's a scene in Brooklyn Nine-Nine where one of the characters stands in front of a vending machine and talks about how it's so unhealthy. This is the source of all our, I think he does this little thing like
Yeah.
all of our salts and sugar and fats and gluten. And I remember being surprised, like, what? That's what?
right.
It definitely was a thing, and that was like kind of right in the middle of it.
Exactly.
Like during that show.
That's
yeah.
about when that show was
It was big.
big. It was that 5 or 10 years ago, and that's when all this was happening, right? And you can imagine, like, if you've got these gastrointestinal symptoms and you're trying to figure out what the cause of it is, and you just can't figure it out, then you're going to start restricting your diet and everything. And if you're restricting your diet, like we said, gluten is in everything. So if you want to get gluten out of your diet, you have to take a lot of things out of your diet.
It's true.
And so there's a really good chance that if you take gluten completely out of your diet, that you're going to see an effect in some way.
I suppose that's true. Yeah, I suppose that's true.
And so how do you know that it's gluten? Well, you don't. It's just all you know is that that's what you're trying right now, right? And so what do we do to find out, Maura? How do we find out the truth?
Science?
Science, that's right. This is not a trick question. So there have been some systematic reviews of research that was done. One back in 2017, there was a systematic review of research that looked at studies where people with alleged non-celiac gluten sensitivity were given gluten in a blinded fashion, and there was no reliable evidence that they showed any symptoms at all when it was taken, like that there was no change in their symptoms when they were given gluten. So systematic review of all that research back in 2017 showed that. Another 2019 review was done testing the so-called Salerno experts criteria. Now what that is where wheat and gluten are removed from the diets of people who are suspected of having non-celiac gluten sensitivity, and then they're re-challenged. Gluten is brought back into their diet to see if any of their symptoms return, similar to what we were mentioning earlier.
Okay.
And so a review of in 2019 was done of some research that was done testing that system, that method, right? Now, what they found were there were some slight preliminary results, but the results of those studies were mixed and weak overall.
Okay.
Not very many studies exist that use the same protocol is one of the problems. There also isn't a consistent diagnostic criteria for non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And the testing that is done relies way too much on subjective patient reports. So as a result of all of that, that's what the review was really kind of inconclusive in 2019, because you can't say anything yay or nay if the research isn't great, right?
Yep, for sure.
So if you combine sort of this middling research results with the fact that there's yet to be even found a marker in the blood that links people with alleged non-celiac gluten sensitivity together, there's been no biomarkers found for this. then that means that at the very best, when it comes to gluten sensitivity, all we can say is that more research needs to be done, and we can't really
Yeah.
come anywhere near saying that gluten sensitivity even exists at all. So the best thing to do is to not assume that it does exist, but instead do more research. I lean towards thinking that it doesn't exist, and the reason is all the things that I've said, the research that's inconclusive, not been done, haven't found any biomarkers, but also since 2019, there's really not been any advance in the science in the past 5 years. And you would expect that if there were things to be found, then those would be being found, but they're not. So anyway, it's not to say that there's no such thing necessarily as gluten sensitivity, but we have to be skeptical when we're not finding any good data, right? So,
Yeah, it's true. And it's not to say that those experiencing symptoms didn't experience them.
oh, for sure.
You go through that pain and frustration. It'd be hard if you can't find a real diagnosis, but you want to find the right cause. You want to eliminate what's really causing it, and it sounds like this is unlikely to be part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know though. It seems strange to me that there has never been a gluten allergy.
That's what the research apparently there's never been any known case of a gluten allergy. So
That's very interesting because
yeah,
that there's just allergies to everything out there. Like there's
feels
so
like
many
it.
things
Yeah.
that you can be allergic to. It's strange that there's never been that. But maybe if you do have one, it presents so similarly to celiac that it functionally isn't much different.
Maybe. Who knows?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what we know about gluten and all these gluten sensitivity claims and everything. So go out there informed. If you feel like you're having, like you said, people do experience real symptoms that are
For sure.
that are miserable, I'm sure. But eliminating gluten from your diet is not only really challenging, but also quite expensive. So
Yeah.
so unless you have celiac, maybe. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm assuming that people haven't done the work to figure out what it is. I'm sure that
Sure,
everyone's
sure.
trying very, 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 very hard.
Yeah.
But good luck, I guess, is what I really want to say. Good
Mhm,
luck to
mhm.
anybody who's experiencing that and trying to figure it out.
So, I was gonna go right into the wrap up, but I guess
Yeah.
we have some
Do we have
some
anybody
chat.
any chat
A couple things.
chatting chats?
All around science, more research needed. Okay, Tweeb. That's true. You got us. We say that every time.
That's a t-shirt for our show for sure.
Yeah.
More research needed.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
It's always more
science is,
research
right?
needed.
Like
It'll never end. Like there's no end to
Yeah.
the research we can do.
yeah. So I think that's a great t-shirt because that's true. That's
Yeah, I
our
love it.
ethos, right? Like
It is great, yeah.
that's how science works. More research is needed. Except for some things you just don't need to research, like homeopathy. No more research is needed.
Don't bother. Yeah, that is just a straight up scam, actually.
Acupuncture, Reiki.
It's all around science. Logan expected it to be discussion of things around science that were in fact not scientific.
All around.
Interesting. I guess I can see that. I can see that.
We
All around.
Here's a little behind the scenes. I love that we've got people here showing up for our very first Everyone live show. You get to hear this discussion. We thought we had so many different ideas for different names.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges with starting a podcast these days is that all the names are taken.
There's all the good ones.
Yeah, all the names. I think we really wanted one. What was it?
So we disagreed on this actually.
Oh, did we? Uh-oh.
Everything is science.
Everything.
And I was
Oh,
like, I don't want that name.
that was an
because it's
idea I
not
had. You're right.
true.
Everything is
Yeah,
science.
you were excited about it, and it's pithy and it's fun, and there's a truth to it, but
But you
there's
were pretty
also
philosophically firm on.
I just didn't feel like I just like people be like, well, homeopathy is a thing, so is it science? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was always kind of the
I
thing
think
that
I
it kept
came
coming
along.
back
I think
to.
I came around. Even if I hadn't come around, we have to both agree on the title, right? So it
Exactly,
wouldn't have mattered.
exactly.
But I think I came around because I thought I don't want to spend like I don't want to be spending our days like rolling our eyes and answering people's claims that, well, what is this science? Is Come on.
Right.
Right.
Yes. And I love the idea of expanding the concepts that science can encompass. I think there's a lot more that we can do
Mhm.
around that, but yeah, not everything is really science, I don't
Yeah, one of the other ones that we really wanted was so this is what everybody thinks that we should have done, right? All About Science, but there's an organization already that exists called All
course.
About Science.
Of course. Yeah.
So I think it's a Canadian organization, isn't it?
All About Science. Now I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, I think it is because we looked into it. We were gonna like see if we could figure out how to take him to court or something. Not really.
That was the plan.
I think they would have won having the name.
allaboutScience.org.
Yeah, or having already had the name, they would have won that fight.
Oh, they've got a statement of faith. The sole basis of our beliefs is the Bible, God's infallible written word, the 66 books of the Old and New Testaments. So
Oh,
maybe not
something we
what we're
want to
going
be
for.
connected to.
Not what we are going for.
Yeah, we
All
do.
About Science. Who
It's
is
not
God?
not who we want to be confused for.
Is the Bible true? Does God exist scientifically? Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Abiogenesis, the concept that life came from non-life. Is this notion feasible? Oh, I remember this. Age of
Yeah.
the Earth. Archaeopteryx, birds. Okay, this is all just young Earth creationist stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, literally all of it is. This is not evidence for God, though, you guys. This
Yeah.
is just attempted disproving of
Science.
evolution.
Evolution. Really.
Established theories and evolution specifically. Cool. So All About Science, not our jam.
Yeah.
But fun fact, I used to believe all that, you guys. So don't get too judgy.
Yeah.
'Cause
Don't get too mean.
I'm not going to be insulted, but I just want you to know that it's all about your context. Context makes
Also,
a huge
that
difference.
they are people too.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I was never dumb.
Right.
I just had a different context.
Right.
And now I have a few more critical thinking skills that I employ to inform my beliefs.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
More keeping it real. She didn't uncover scientific evidence of God on a creationist website. Anywho, let's wrap this up.
Let's do it.
I have something to ask.
Oh, you're gonna start our end part? Okay.
I'll start the end. I had a coworker who was celiac, and I asked him, what do you think of this fad? This non-gluten fad of people who are non-celiac cutting out gluten. And he said, it's the best thing ever because I have so many more options than when I was younger. There's gluten-free everything available for me, and I just love it. If they all want to pretend they can't eat gluten, then it's fine with me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? That's a fair take. What did your brother think?
I actually asked him the same question. He has the same thought. He said it's a little eye rolly, but ultimately it has brought awareness to the issue. There are so many more restaurants that he can go to now. Even fast food places. You go to Chick-fil-A, for example. Say what you will about Chick-fil-A, they will drop everything and make sure that they take celiac seriously, and so they will clean everything off. They'll move everything to a different grill. They'll make everybody whenever your food is being prepared, everyone that is even closely connected to even being around your food has to like change their gloves and all that kind of stuff. So
that's cool because it can be some people. It's just even the smallest bit,
the tiniest bit. Yeah. Anytime my brother comes and visits, we have to. I go through a deep cleaning of like all of our our
Mhm.
dishes, our cooking utensils,
Mhm.
and everything. If we do anything on the grill, I have to take special care, put like tinfoil over everything, and all kinds of stuff. So you just have to be
Yeah.
careful.
Makes it a little easier. There's gluten-free Oreos too. It's a whole smorgasbord out there.
But you don't need Oreos. Come on, guys. I call Oreos trans fat sandwiches.
I feel like they took out the trans fats.
They probably did.
Canada.
Trans fats, I
feel
don't
like they might-
think
maybe did.
anybody has even talked about in like 10 years.
That's true, actually. That also is an old diet thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when that was a big controversial thing. They were
Wouldn't
like,
it be
"Don't take
funny
the
to
trans fats out of our food?"
Wouldn't it be funny to do a whole like a whole feature on trans fats? That would be like the most like out of touch
dated
dated feature.
Let's
people
talk about Obama's foreign policy too.
Yeah. People be listening to the episode and be like, "What are trans fats? What are you even talking about?"
I love it.
All right. Well, that's going to be it for this episode of All Around Science, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us live. I loved seeing some new names in the chat room. Everybody who's listening right now is invited to our live shows when we do them once a month, because we're doing them for everyone now. It's going to be on YouTube. I'm hoping next month I'm going to get the system set up to where I can simultaneously stream to YouTube and Facebook, so maybe it'd be easier for people to
Ooh.
see. But yeah, thank you everybody for hanging out, and thank you for listening to our podcast listeners as well. If any of you have questions or feedback that you want to give us, you can email that to us at contact@allaroundscience.com.
Find us on socials at All Around Sci or All Around Science.
My name's Bobby,
I'm Maura.
and we'll see you next week for some more science stuff. This is a part of the show where we write our teasers that get edited into the top of the show. So bear with us as you hear faint typing clacks. Keyboard clacking. I'm good.
What's the deal with gluten?
What's the deal? I should say it like that. What's the deal with
We did leaded gasoline.
Oh yeah, we did do leaded gasoline.
Gasoline. Oh, you're on. You're up.
Okay. On today's episode,
Some bacteria can adapt to the season.
and gluten allergies, gluten sensitivity. What's the deal with gluten?
All that and more today on All Around Science.
Have we
You
talked
can go
about
in for
lately
the
how
Seinfeld
how I
impression.
do this when I do the intro all the time?
What's the deal with
This?
gluten?
What are you, Italian? You're like, hey, gluten allergies.
Trans fats. You know what, Logan? I think the thing about trans fats is it feels too recent. Leaded gasoline is like old history, and trans fats is like now we're dating ourselves a little bit. You know what I mean? Like we were there when the trans fats were banned. everyone's like, God, you're old. I don't know. You're right. We did leaded gasoline. It was a really long time ago.
But
Trans
also,
fats
there
was a less
are
long time
still
ago.
leaded gasolines.
Really, for what?
Aviation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're trying to. My plane that I fly has leaded gasoline in it. Sorry, guys.
Dang.
It's a low lead gasoline, but it's still got.
Oh, phew. Oh, good. I'll be sure to thank you when I'm going crazy.
But there is actually the it's only a matter of time. It's getting the FAA is trying to phase it out, which
Oh, that's
everybody's wondering what is that going to mean for our airplane engines. But it's got to happen, right? We need to stop using it.
Yup. Well, this was good despite the hiccup at the start.
Yeah.
Next time we will start it on time.
And I'll press the stream button.
Press the stream button, and yeah, it'll be good.
Yeah.
Replace the lead. with trans fats,
Put-
then you can be current.
Put the trans fats.
Oh,
Put
I don't
the
think
trans
Logan's gonna
fats in the
let us one
gasoline.
go. I'm
All
just
right.
gonna have a series of old timey science.
Yeah, that'd be
Actually,
great,
that'd be
right?
interesting. Some old timey science.
Yeah. Laudanum.
You know, they used to think bran was bad for you.
Oh yeah, and eggs. Everybody should
Eggs
be.
have a long history of being good and then bad and then good and
It's
then
just
bad
back
and
and
then good
forth,
and then
right?
bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cholesterol. I'm getting lots of show ideas. Okay, I gotta go.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for hanging out. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Right. I always remember to click end stream.
That's good.